Well, always a delight to have John Mittendorf in the house. And John, we're going to talk about why kids go off to college and lose their faith. And I know it's a really passionate topic for you as me as well. Before I get into all of that with John, I just want to remind our viewers and our listeners that the Dove app is available. It's a free app, and if you have, whether you have Apple products or Android products, you can go to the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store and type in theDove, that's one word, theDove, and you can download the Dove app free on your devices, and you're able to watch the Dove TV live, listen to the Dove Radio live. You can get archives of previous shows with John Mittendorf. You can listen to the Word for You Today. You can order a Word for You Today. Boy, there's all kinds of things on there. You can listen to Call to Worship with Dave Kersey. It's just a terrific resource for you. So check it out and then share it with your friends, and then take a few moments, if you will, and rate it. And again, go to the iTunes Store if you have Apple products. Go over to the Google Store, Google Play Store if you have Android products, and just put in the Dove, and boom. Everything we do here in these four little walls is right there on that little device. John, you had...
Well, good morning, by the way. Good morning.
Good to see you. Listen, you had an interesting response to one of our previous shows.
Oh, boy. Our show last month, I think it was a blockbuster, because, you know, I run into people, you know, and people say, boy, what a great program. I never realized. Thank you very much. You hit the nail on the head. I got a couple phone calls, and then I got an email. Yeah. And I think I should go back and just review very quickly for our listeners that may not remember last month and what we're doing. And we're going to give this book away this morning, by the way, Already Gone.
Already Gone, yeah.
That is the result of a survey that was taken by a company that was commissioned to try to figure out why so many people are leaving the church, and specifically young people, and basically this current generation. And a couple things that they said was, and I think probably the blockbuster encapsulation of that book goes something like this, and this is a quote from the book. The core problem behind the exodus of young people in churches has been teaching only half of the truth, and the other half we've given up. We preach the gospel, the crucifixion, the resurrection, which is important, but we preach about, and we also preach about trusting Jesus, and we preach about morality, but all the while the attack on Genesis is raging, causing doubt, fueling unbelief, and undermining every single thing we say. And as a result, the next generation does not believe in the authority of Scripture. The Scriptures have become irrelevant, and there is no connection between spiritual, scriptural things and real practical things. Currently, most Christians, particularly young people, are not capable of defending their faith. Yeah. And when they go into school, in fact, they gave a very interesting statistic that for those people that were interviewed, and they interviewed over 20,000 people all around the country, that out of the people that were interviewed, 40% first had doubts about the Scriptures in middle school. Wow. We tend to think, well, college gets them. Yeah. No, it's way before that. 43.7 had their first doubts in high school, and then 10% by the time that they reach college were doubting. So really the doubts start back in middle school. And you know, when you go back to Genesis, when Satan encountered Eve, the first thing he said was, did God really say? Yeah. And so when they sit in church, you know, they basically listen to the New Testament, you know, which is fine. But then when they're out in the secular media and they watch television, you know, Bill Nye, the science guy, evolution is the basis of science, and so on and so on, the door starts to crack open just a little bit. And then when they get to school, here's a professor standing up there, or a teacher, you know, evolution is fact. And as soon as they start to wonder a little bit, you know, the door is wide open. Yeah. So, as you said, right after the program last month, I got an email, and I want to read that. And I want the people that are listening or watching to listen to this very closely. She gives her name in a brief introduction. She says, I'm living in Washington State right now taking a biology class. Biology or geology are the two biggies. Yeah. My mom mentioned your name as someone who would be helpful to talk to, as the topic of evolution is discussed a large part of the time in my class. I am very rusty on what I know about the evolution versus creation discussion, and I'm finding myself feeling, and I think she wanted to say defeated, but she says defended. Yeah. I'm feeling myself almost defeated as I sit in my class and listen to my professor teach it as Fact. I was wondering if you could point me to some resources for me to learn more, and what sort of questions would be good for me to ask in class. And boy, there's a bombshell right there. Yeah, hey, Prof, I got a question,
yeah.
And here's 50 people all sitting in there looking at you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I am also assigned to write a paper on evolution and required to watch 2 videos on it. Okay. I am not sure how to approach the paper and have been putting it off as it is now due next Monday, and I think I got this on Thursdays. Well, that's the way I operate, you know.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it till the night before, you know, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do about this.
Well, you know, this email's packed with so much. First of all, I want to commend this young lady for realizing she had some roots in her faith she needed to go back to.
Absolutely.
And secondly, she had the fortitude to really do her homework and think about, wait a minute, I got to reach outside myself for help.
Yeah.
And 3, this email proves exactly what we're trying to say is your young people are going into these environments and they're being indoctrinated into a supposed fact. Evolution is fact.
Right.
It's not.
It is not. It is not.
Yeah.
And so
what'd you do?
Well, I had an opportunity to talk to her. And, you know, I wrote her back and I said, you know, call me up anytime. So she called me back. We probably talked for about 45 minutes, and I said, you know, a couple things for you to think about. I said, you know, I'm really happy and pleased that you want to stand up for your Christian faith, but you're in a dilemma. In that, you have to be very careful on what kind of a professor you have. I said, what kind of a professor do you have? And she said, well, I think he's basically a nice guy. Some professors are very aggressive and very negative towards, I'm going to say, creationism or the scriptures. They don't want to hear about it. And if you want to contest them in class, you make them look bad. That's not good.
Right.
So I recommended that she go to her professor privately and give him a quick background on where she was from and what she would like to do. That she would like to write a paper on creationism, or the creationism viewpoint would probably be a better way to describe that.
Right.
And so she did that. And then we probably talked for a half hour, and I said, basically, I said, you know, science is on your side, it is not on your professor's side. And she says, so what do you mean by that? I said, evolution violates all the basic principles of science and nature. She goes, well, I've never heard that before. I said, I know that. I said, as an example, I said it violates, and we went through it, I don't need to go through that again this morning, but you know, the first and second laws of thermodynamics, you have the law of biogenesis, which says life only comes from pre-existing life. We went right down the road.
Let me interrupt you. Let me just say that you prepped her.
Yes.
She wrote her paper.
Yes.
And we're going to tell you what she got in the grade.
When we come back,
come back. We'll be right back with John Mittendorf. Okay, we're back with John Mittendorf, and we're talking about young people in school defending their faith, which goes all the way down to middle school these days. And by the way, we're going to be giving away a book coming up in just a few moments. This is put out by Ken Ham and Britt Beamer. Yeah, that's Answers in Genesis, which is the Already Gone book. Yeah, this is a fabulous resource. Whether you win this or not, check it out at Evangel or Christian Discount Books in Jacksonville or online. I guess you can go to Answers in Genesis and get it too. Yes, you can. But I tell you what, this is a great resource for parents and everybody. Anyway, through our discussion on this matter, a listener got a hold of John, and she is a biology student, and her professor was pretty much advocating that no, not pretty much. Well, was advocating. It was advocating that evolution is fact. All right. So anyway, she challenged you. You gave her some great wisdom. Yep. Go meet with the professor privately, kind of get a feel of his pulse. Yep. And say, I'd like to write a counter paper. And would he support that or not? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This was her email after the class. And this email is probably about 2 weeks old. Yeah. Hi John, I just received my final grade for my biology class today, as well as the grade for my evolution assignment. So I thought I would share an update. Overall, I finished with a B in the class and received an A on the evolution assignment. I spent hours on this assignment reading, researching, and compiling my notes, and although it was relatively only a small portion of the grade, I am thrilled. I ended up turning in late, but my professor gave me some grace and did not deduct any points for the later submission. I also ended up having a very interesting conversation with him
after class about what I believe and why this assignment posed an interesting challenge for me.
Everything we talked about is encapsulated right there.
Oh, we got one more sentence.
Yeah.
Thanks again for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciate it and value learning more about these important issues and how to better engage society as a believer. I'm taking microbiology during the summer, so I know the topic of evolution may continue to arise, and so, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so, but, you know, Perry, there is a classic example, and this is something we've talked about before multiple times. There's a problem out there, and the major problem is our kids, our children, and I'm going to say grown-ups too, are not really educated in the historicity and the accuracy of the scriptures in Genesis. As you and I have talked about before, if Genesis is not correct as stated, then what else in the Bible is not correct?
Well, then everything's negotiable.
Then everything else, and particularly the resurrection. If the resurrection is negotiable, we have a major problem.
Right.
And so when our young people walk into school, here's this professor teaching, as she said, evolution as a fact. I have to watch videos on it. I have to do reports on it so you can see where it's going. And by the way,
you did give her Ben Stein's Expelled to look at.
Yes, I did. I said, have you seen the movie Expelled, Ben Stein? She says, no, I haven't. I said, you ought to watch it. And I said, I want you to notice one thing. The 3 top evolutionary scientists in the world, Provine, Eugenie Scott, and Dawkins could not defend evolution. When Ben Stein asked them, where did life come from? They couldn't answer the question. But yet, when you take those people and you put them in their own environment, oh yeah, then they're a rocket ship for evolution. But you know, we talk about education, we talk about secular schools. Did you know that there's now a push to get this type of teaching in on homeschooling materials?
No. Into, I mean, evolution into homeschool?
Yeah, materials. Yeah. Just a quick overview, Perry. But the homeschooling movement is under attack. A recent article in the Atlantic magazine featured a new class of homeschooling parents who want what they called more science, and you know what that means, in textbooks published by evangelicals. But here's the kicker. Already 2 publishers, Sunlight and Christian Schools International, want to offer a balanced treatment, but it isn't. Another publisher, Test of Faith, offers homeschool curriculum that specifically teaches God-directed evolution. And if that isn't enough, 5 Wheaton college professors are writing a college text to promote the consensus view on origins. 2 Bryan College professors are writing a curriculum for younger students, and it goes on and on and on. So not only has the evolutionary thrust been around a long time in secular schools, now they're starting in homeschooling Christian academia.
Isn't there a clash though coming, John? Because when you get down to the truth of science, if they can't, if the evidence of science, excuse me, the truth of science rests upon the evidence of evolution, which cannot be sustained, you got a problem.
Yes. Now how do they get around that problem? They don't talk about it.
So they just drop it.
They just drop it. But what they do is they just talk about evolution as fact, and they just keep pressing the same fact. In fact, I'm comfortable in saying that the evolutionary attack on the Bible is a very united front, but the Christian response to that
is very weak,
and very fragmented. As an example, there's 110 colleges in the Christian Coalition, the Christian Coalition of Colleges. Only 10 teach Genesis as written as literal history. That means 100 Christian colleges have differing viewpoints on Genesis. So then why shouldn't people be confused about what to believe?
Okay, let's bring this down to moms and dads that are listening and they're saying, all right, what is my student learning? Whether they're in middle school, high school, or college, what are they learning? Well, we know that if they're any kind of in secular environment, they're learning that evolution is fact.
Right.
All right, so this puts the weight back on the church to counter that. If we're going to teach the scripture, we have to teach all of it.
The church and parents.
Where do we insert, and how do we insert the creation evidence into our catechism?
From the beginning. Parents at home would be a great start. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well how are they going to do that? Because a lot of parents are probably thinking, well I don't have a lot of education in that. And so I brought along a couple of examples. This is Institute Creation Research. Acts and Facts, that is free. If you want to subscribe, just go to Acts Creation Creation Institute, creationinstitute.org.
Okay.
On the internet. You can sign up for that. It's ICR, icr.org, and you can get that for free. It's got great articles every month. And one of my favorites is Answers, this magazine right here. If you want to show that, and then open it up to the middle, Perry, you will notice that in the middle there's a special section for kids only. And there is the information for you, and they have a complete curriculum on biblical approach towards Genesis from a kid's perspective. And so parents have a great resource to choose from.
Well,
and also, let me butt in just for a second, and that also applies to Sunday school teachers also, Perry.
Yeah, I just think that we ought to seriously look at this as part of our Sunday school curriculum. And it goes back to Genesis. First of all, it's a fascinating book to uncover, and it can be sustained. The
Answers magazine, you can go to aig.org and you can sign up for that magazine too. And I think that magazine comes once every couple of months. This magazine is a quality magazine. It's got articles all the way through this. Yeah, I mean, it's just great information. So people say, well, I don't really have the resources to be reading all these books and studying all these PhDs on evolution and creation. You don't have to. I mean, there's a lot of resources that are available. And if that material is taught from the beginning in the home and in the church and Sunday schools, then the kids have a great resource that when they walk into a classroom and the teacher is saying, well, evolution is this and evolution is that, they're sitting there thinking, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. Now, if you are
in fear of their grade, see?
Well, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
If you're a student in a class, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to compromise your faith, and are you going to go along with it, or are you going to stand up like this student did? And of course, the results were fabulous. And this is my recommendation. You've got to know your teacher first. And by that I mean sit down with him, as you mentioned, privately, and say, this is where I'm coming from. If I write a paper on creation or the biblical approach to origins, would you support that? Will you let me do that? And I've heard stories of some students going to teachers, and the teachers say, well, why don't you give an hour presentation next week in front of class on it? I'd love to do that. Love to do that as an alternative viewpoint. But if you have a teacher that is very aggressive and very hostile towards the biblical approach to origins, to be able to raise your hand and say, I don't believe that in class, or to take your teacher on in class in front of the class and to make him look bad, that could be very detrimental to your grade.
Yeah, I mean, you may want to transfer to another class, another teacher. Well, seriously.
Well, true, yeah. Yeah, but I think sitting down in private beforehand.
Yeah, that's really wise.
That's key.
Yeah.
That's key to see where he's at and if he supports that, so you don't, I would say, shock him with something in class. You're in a hostile environment already.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're primarily talking college level there, but in high school, do the same thing?
I would do the same thing in high school. And actually, I think some students are very capable of doing that in middle school also.
Yeah. If they're creative thinkers, but if they're not taught creative thinking, then...
The problem is, Perry, when you stop and think about it, such as this email that we just read, she was not really comfortable in taking the teacher on, or she was really starting to wonder because she didn't really have a background in it. But once she had a background, a little bit of a background in it, she writes in a paper. Yeah,
I think that is the key, because she had enough of good teaching in her to ask the right question at the right time.
Right, exactly right.
Well, John, thank you. Again, Answers, this is...
That's Answers magazine. You get that from aig.org, or you can go to Acts and Facts, which is free. That's icr.org.
Okay. And check it out. All right, we're going to give away this book. Did we say how many callers?
No.
Okay. Hope they're listening out there. Caller number 5 gets this book called Already Gone, Why Your Kids Will Quit Church and What You Can Do About it. This is a great resource. So caller number 5 at 776-5368 or toll free at 1-800-373-5368. John, thank you so much. I know we're just scratching the surface on this, and you have much passion. Quickly, what can we get into next time?
I'm still debating on that, Perry, so we'll wait and see.
He's a debater. Call and get John to come to your church and teach Genesis, all right, to your young people. Thanks, John.
You bet, Perry.